special moment this week. This is Easter week. It's the week that we look forward to our celebration this upcoming Sunday of the resurrection. Friday is the day that we know of as Good Friday. It's the day that we remember and recognize the fact that Christ was crucified. And then we look forward to the celebration of the resurrection on Easter Sunday. And a big part of that crucifixion and resurrection story involves a tomb and a stone that was rolled in front of that tomb. And so I want to share some things with you about that today. Perhaps that stone was somewhat similar to the one that we're here on site looking at today. The Gospels tell us that after Jesus was crucified, that a man named Joseph of Arimathea took down his body and with some others wrapped his body in burial clothes, and that they laid his body in a tomb that Joseph had rented out, and the scripture tells us that they rolled the stone in front of that tomb and they left him there. The Bible also tells us that at some point the religious leaders who were responsible for setting Christ up and having him crucified remembered that Jesus had taught that on the third day he would rise again. And their fear was that Jesus' disciples would also remember the fact that he had taught that, and that they would sneak to the tomb and they would steal his body, and they would perpetrate a lie that said that Jesus had risen from the dead. And the religious leaders' fear was that that lie, that deception as they put it, would be worse than the original deception of all of Jesus' teachings. And so with that fear, the religious leaders went to Pilate, the Roman official who had ordered Christ to be crucified, and they told him what they were afraid of. And Pilate heard their fears, and he gave them permission to take a Roman guard and to go and seal the tomb as best as they could. Now, historians teach us that when Pilate released a Roman guard to go with those religious leaders, that may have been as few as 2 to 4 Roman soldiers, but could also have been up to as many as 50 or 60 Roman soldiers. But either way, the religious leaders of the day took as many precautions as they felt they could to seal that tomb and make sure that no lie could be told in a believable fashion from his disciples and followers that he had risen from the dead. Now, when they sealed that tomb, they would have done something like this. They would have taken a cord or some sort of rope, and they would have stretched it in front of that stone that was rolled in front of the tomb, and they would have applied that cord to either side of the stone with some clay. They would have pressed it into the rock. And into that clay, they would have pressed in the Roman seal, the official image of Caesar, and that would have officially sealed that tomb. And it would have been illegal and a serious crime in that day to break that Roman seal on that tomb without official Roman permission to do so. And so the religious leaders must have felt that by taking a contingent of Roman soldiers and placing them at that tomb on that day, and by placing that Roman seal across the stone in the tomb and sealing it according to Roman law, they must have felt that they had done everything they could, not just to have Christ crucified and kill him so that he would not be a threat to them, but also to seal the fate of even the legend of Christ if his disciples were to steal his body and try to tell some sort of lie that he had risen from the dead. They must have felt that they had done everything they could to seal Christ's fate in that tomb on that day. Now, the Bible also teaches us, as we know, that that's not the end of the story. The Bible teaches us that at some point on that third day, that an angel from heaven descended and rolled that stone away. And the Bible teaches us that he sat up on top of that stone and that his appearance was bright like lightning, and that the Roman soldiers, ever how many were there at the tomb, shook with fear and fell as dead men, which means that they literally passed out from fear at seeing this angel and the fact that he had come with an earthquake and rolled the stone away. The power of God was on display, not only over the powers of death, but over the powers of man to try and place that final seal on Christ, not just life, but reputation even. And so the Bible teaches us that they were unsuccessful, that God's power was greater than that of death, and it was greater than that effort on man's behalf to try to seal his fate and his reputation. Now, the reality for you and I today is that the world attempts, in many ways, this life is difficult, it's hard, we live in a broken world, and it has effects on you and I. And there may be ones of us who are watching this video today and hearing this story about Christ being in the tomb and His body being sealed in that tomb by a heavy stone, and you may feel like this world has beat you down, and you may feel like life has gotten the best of you and that you're at the end of your rope. You may feel like there has been a heavy stone that's been rolled in front of your heart and your hopes of ever recovering from whatever may have happened to you. Maybe that stone is figurative in your life and it represents regrets, or maybe it represents hopes that you had for some event to take place in your life that you feel like may not be possible anymore. Maybe it's guilt that weighs so heavily on your heart. But if the Scripture teaches us anything through this gospel story of death and resurrection, it is that there is no power on earth that is greater than God's power to bring life where there had been death. That is the hope that we have in the gospel, that when the darkest hour had come, when Jesus' disciples had gone away and lost all hope, the irony of the story is that the religious leaders feared that His disciples would be motivated to go and roll that stone away and try to perpetuate a lie about His resurrection. And the reality is that was the furthest thing from the truth. His disciples were defeated and they were hopeless. And they were not trying to pull off anything like that. Maybe you feel hopeless today. But in the midst of our hopelessness, God works miracles. He sends power from heaven and He rolls stones away. And where there had been death, there comes life. And so my prayer for you today is that this story will encourage you and that you'll remember that there's always hope. That when the Bible teaches us that God sent an angel that rolled the stone away from the tomb so that Christ could come forth because He was greater than any power of death, He can do the same for your heart. He can roll that stone away. May this Easter be the Easter that you feel that stone rolled away from your heart, and that you, for the first time perhaps, feel everlasting life and freedom and joy and hope. It's possible. Would you let God roll that stone away from your heart?